Hello, once again. Welcome to the Security Update, which we often look at issues concerning security in the continent from west to east. And these are the stories making the headlines. Somalia and Djibouti defense ministers discuss cooperation in the war against Al-Shabaab. U.S. welcomes Ethiopia peace talks, calls for cessation of hostilities. U.S. and U.K. raise alerts over possible attack in Nigeria's capital. Plus, Mali's foreign minister accuses France of violating airspace, supporting militants. Welcome to the program. Somalia's Defense Minister Abdelkader Mohamed Noor had a fruitful engagement with his Djiboutian counterpart Hassan Omar Mohamed Burhan and Djibouti's Armed Forces Chief Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim. Initial reports say the officials were discussing the ongoing war against Al-Shabaab in Somalia and how Djibouti could be part of the efforts. Somalia's Defense Minister Abdelkader Mohamed Noor had a fruitful engagement with his Djiboutian counterpart Hassan Omar Mohamed Burhan and Djibouti's Armed Forces Chief Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim. Initial reports say the officials were discussing the ongoing war against Al-Shabaab in Somalia and how Djibouti could be part of the efforts. The two governments did not clarify the kind of support Djibouti could offer to be part of the efforts to eradicate Al-Shabaab from Somalia, despite Djibouti forces being part of the African Transition Mission. Mohamed Noor thanked the government and the people of Djibouti for their support and cooperation in eradicating the terrorism menace in Somalia, saying that peace will not only thrive in the country, but also in the whole region. For his part, Djibouti's defense minister pledged his government's commitment to fully support the Horn of Africa nation. For his part, Djibouti's defense minister pledged his government's commitment to fully support the Horn of Africa nation and its forces in ensuring security and exterminating the terrorist group from the country, noting that the peace and stability of Somalia is the foundation for the peace of the region and the world. Somalia's Al-Shabaab claimed the death of at least 20 people, including outgoing government officials, in a separate attack in the Hirshabelle state. The group also exploded key bridges for undisclosed reasons, but it is widely believed to be related to the ongoing Al-Shabaab government forces war. A car bomb exploded in Jalalaqsi town where soldiers operating a security checkpoint intercepted a vehicle. The checkpoint is near local government buildings and a military base belonging to African Union peacekeepers from Djibouti. Meanwhile, civilians were killed in a separate explosion when a three-wheeled motorcycle with explosives attached struck the Bulaperde town bridge. The important bridge links Somalia's south and central regions. Pictures taken by the witnesses show the explosion partially damaged the bridge. At least 20 people were confirmed dead, including government soldiers and outgoing officials. The explosion destroyed buildings near the checkpoint where the local officials were based. Al-Shabaab has immediately claimed responsibility for the two attacks. Bulaperde and Jalalaqsi in the Hiran region have been the focal point of efforts to mobilize the local population against Al-Shabaab. The Somali military court on Monday executed by firing in square two Al-Shabaab operatives in the Somali capital, Mogadishu. Shuaib Abdullahi Muhammad and Satak Abdi Chapar were convicted for their terror activities running for several years in the capital that claimed lives and left many more with injuries. The two, who used to go by their code names Ahmed and Kono, have been actively operating in the group since 2014. The Somali military court on Monday executed by firing in square two Al-Shabaab operatives in the Somali capital, Mogadishu. Shuaib Abdullahi Muhammad and Sadaq Abdi Chapar were convicted for their terror activities running for several years in the capital that claimed lives and left many more with injuries. The two, who used to go by their code names Ahmed and Kono, have been actively operating in the group since 2014. The state media reported Shuaib was a well-trained intelligence agent for Al-Shabaab and used to spy on government officials. He was especially assigned to report from Dinsor checkpoint before he shifted to Mogadishu with his family in 2017. The killing comes only 2 days after the military court also executed by firing squad a soldier found guilty of killing 4 residents in Mogadishu's Karan district apprehended 2 suspected Al-Shabaab members after allegedly killing a government soldier. Somali police spokesman Sadiq Adan Ali told state-owned media that the 2 men were handed over to security forces to be brought to justice. Mogadishu residents have apprehended a suspected Al-Shabaab members in connection with the murder of Somali soldier in Mogadishu on Wednesday. Without disclosing their identities, the police spokesperson Sadiq Adam Ali said the 2 suspects are now in the hands of the police and they will soon appear in court to face the charges against them. 2 weeks ago, a suspected Al-Shabaab member was apprehended by angry civilians after threatening a businessman with a firearm. Police spokesperson Sadiq Adam stated that the era of terrorism has come to an end and urged the public to work with the security forces. Since last month, the Somali government has intensified the war on Al-Shabaab, asking the locals to collaborate with the security agencies if they see suspicious activities or individuals. The announcement of peace negotiations between the Ethiopian government and the regional authorities of Tigray has been warmly received by the United States. In a statement, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on the parties involved in the conflict to immediately cease all hostilities and return to the negotiation table. But we'll be back after the short break.
Making documentaries is one of the most creative craft and challenging endeavors you can be involved in. It is an effective strategy to inform, persuade, educate, defend the perspective, and shed light on various issues, policies, and activities. At CBA TV, documentary production is our forte. We capture every TikTok detail of events in highest resolution to tell the story you care about, from politics to human angle, research-based content, educative and informative. We also help you project your story in a dynamic perspective that attracts the world views of the target audience, as there is no better or more powerful way to place the organization's values and achievements than to make an excellent documentary film. No doubt, our strength lies in these ventures, and we pride in many award-winning documentaries which have been earning accolades across Africa and beyond. Let's tell your story.
The announcement of peace negotiations between the Ethiopian government and the regional authorities of Tigray has been warmly received by the United States. In a statement, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on parties involved in the conflict to immediately cease all hostilities and return to the negotiation table.
The United States has welcomed the announcement of peace talks led by the African Union between the Ethiopian government and the Tigrayan regional authorities. In a statement, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on the parties involved in the conflict to immediately cease all hostilities. The U.S. top diplomat also urged the Ethiopian National Defense Force and Eritrean Defense Forces to immediately halt all the joint military offensive and ensure civilians are protected. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres earlier warned that the situation in Ethiopia is spiraling out of control as fighting continues in Tigray. According to the United Nations, the renewal of hostilities is exacerbating an already dire situation, with the World Food Programme, WFP, estimating that millions of people are in need of food aid across northern Ethiopia. Ethiopia is under pressure to begin peace talks that were initially set to begin this month in South Africa. Fighting resumed between Tigrayan rebel forces and Ethiopian government troops in August, bringing an end to a ceasefire in place since March that had allowed humanitarian aid to enter the region. Kamil Sadiq reporting for CBA TV.
The United Kingdom and the United States government have warned that violent extremists are likely to try to carry out attacks in Nigeria. They said attacks could be indiscriminate and could affect Western interests as well as places visited by tourists.
The United States and British governments have warned of a possible terrorist attack in Nigeria's federal capital, Abuja, especially aimed at government buildings, places of worship, and schools, among other targets. The U.S. Embassy in Nigeria said there is an elevated risk of terror attacks in the country, specifically Abuja, while adding that shopping malls, law enforcement facilities, and international organizations were among places at risk. In its part, the United Kingdom's government cautioned that its citizens in Nigeria should stay alert due to what it described as an increased threat of terrorist attack in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. The UK government noted that the potential attacks could be indiscriminate and could affect Western interests as well as places visited by tourists. It also cautioned its citizens to avoid places where there are political or other large public gatherings. Nigeria is fighting an insurgency mainly in the northeast, but in July, the Islamic State claimed responsibility for a raid on a prison in Abuja, which freed around 440 inmates, raising fears that insurgents were venturing from their enclaves. Humanitarian staff and assets have been targeted during attacks in the northeastern part of the country, including in garrison towns and on roads. Methods of attack by violent groups included coordinated armed assault, rocket attacks, assassinations, kidnapping, use of improvised devices, IEDs, among others. Kamel Sadiq, CBA TV, Nigeria.
Mali has accused France of espionage and trying to destabilize the West African country. The Malian Foreign Affairs Minister says the military government would exercise its right to self-defense if France continued to undermine its national interests.
The Malian Foreign Affairs Minister said the country's military government would exercise its right to self-defense should France continue to underrate the West African country's sovereignty and national security. Speaking at a United Nations Security Council briefing on Mali in New York, United States of America, Minister Abdoulaye Diop reiterated accusations that France had violated its airspace and provided arms to extremist militants waging an offensive in the northern region of the West African country for the past 10 years. France has denied the allegations leveled against it by the Malian authorities. The Malian diplomat also, in his briefing, denied human rights violations by the Malian army as reported by the UN and other groups. Several reports, including the latest UN Secretary-General assessment, accuse Malian soldiers and Russian machineries collaborating with the military government of abusing and killing civilians suspected of colluding with armed militants. Diop called the allegations unfounded and warned against what he called instrumentalizing human rights issues. Relations between Mali and France have soured since an August 2020 coup and over the decision of the French authorities to withdraw troops sent in 2013 to help fight the insurgency. On Monday, 4 UN peacekeepers were killed in a separate attack in the northern part of the country. Mali has faced instability since 2012 when militants hijacked a Tuareg rebellion in the north. Kamel Sadiq, CBA TV.
After 5 years, a Somali military court has executed a soldier for the murder of late Minister of Public Works, Abbas Abdullahi Siraji, who was killed on May 2017. The soldier who was executed on Saturday is identified as Ahmed Abdullahi Aidid. After 5 years, a Somali military court has executed a soldier for the murder of late Minister of Public Works Abbas Abdullahi Siraji, who was killed on May 2017. The soldier who was executed on Saturday is identified as Ahmed Abdullahi Aidid. Mahmoud Siraji the deceased's brother has welcomed the execution of Ahmed Abdullahi Abdi, saying that justice has finally prevailed, and thanking President Hassan Sheikh for giving his brother a justice. In June 2017, a military court in Mogadishu sentenced Ahmed Abdullahi to death over the killing of the cabinet minister after being found guilty of willful murder. 31-year-old Abbas Abdullahi Sirachi, the youngest cabinet minister in Somalia's history, was the public works minister under former Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khaire. He made the headlines for his background refugee status and later was appointed as a federal minister. And that's our security update for this time. Thank you very much. My name is Hamse Daabjeerin.